Today, we're going to be talking about the Han Dynasty, one of the most important dynasties in Chinese history. So some background information. The Han Dynasty lasted for around 400 years. That is pretty long as compared to the Qin Dynasty, which lasted for around 20 years. The Han Dynasty was divided into two periods. As you can see, there was a Western Han there, and you will see an Eastern Han. However, you'll see a brief interruption in the two periods, and you'll see why in a second. The first dynasty was called the former or the Western Han Dynasty, and it was then interrupted by the Xin Dynasty. Then it was followed by the later or the Eastern Han Dynasty. So let's talk about the Western Han Dynasty. It was established after a peasant overthrow of Qin Dynasty, and the capital was at present-day Xi'an. It was founded by Liu Bang, his rival was Xiang Yu, and both wanted the throne. And as you can probably tell, Liu Bang was a peasant. So the theme of peasant rebellion is a really important theme in Chinese history. So that is Liu Bang right there. Liu Bang was later renamed as Emperor Gaozu, meaning eminent progenitor, or the most significant originator. So because Liu Bang was a peasant, he fought against the oppressive rule of the Qin, and his characteristics, he was tough, quick-witted, courageous, he can judge character and talent well, and he can listen to advice. This was a very strong contrasting point between him and Emperor Qingshi Huangdi. He issued the three-article code of laws, and number 1, murder is punishable by death, criminals will be punished upon the severity of the crime, and he abolished the rest of the Qin laws. So this really showed how lenient he was, because he really did not like the Qin rule. And he had really lenient laws because he himself was a peasant and he understood how the people felt. So his goals was to unify China through gradual and peaceful means. So some benefits for the peasants from Liu Bang was that he kept the taxes low, he focused on developing agriculture, and restricted governmental spending. He did have some feudal influences, as he wanted to reward comrades who fought with him, and he would reward them with parcels of land. However, he and his officials worked quietly to end the feudal system, as they wanted to create a strong centralized government and a unified country. And this really helped the economy to recover. So another significant emperor in the Western Han Dynasty was Wu Di. Wu Di means martial emperor, and this suggests that there will be a lot of wars in this period. Now, that's Wu Di right there. So some of his accomplishments, he did construct a canal to transport grain. He established a Chinese colony at the northern part of Korea Peninsula, so that means Korea will become a tributary state paying tributes to China. He focused on expanding China. For Liu Bang, he really wanted to defend China, but Wu Di wanted to expand China. So what he did was that he conquered an independent states and waged war against Xiongnu. The Xiongnu were nomadic tribes and occasionally conducted raids. The Han Dynasty tried to appease them throughout the whole Han Dynasty, and appeasement really means to give them presents, give them gifts, but Wu Di resorted to war as they did not really pay off. And under Wu Di, Confucianism became an official state ideology. Confucianism is so important, he needs an individual slide. So this is Confucius right there. Confucianism started from Confucius. So some of its values, it talks about self-restraint, concern for others, filial piety, and loyalty to superiors. So the inferior should obey the superior. So this was kind of like the Qin Dynasty, where the civilians should obey the emperor. However, a contrasting point is that the superior in return should treat the inferiors with respect, or they deserve to be overthrown. Confucianism also believed in education, as education can nurture the innate goodness in humans. In legalism in the Qin Dynasty, they thought that education did not matter. Confucianism also discouraged war, and ironically, there were a lot of warfare under Wu Di. So Wu Di also introduced the civic service exams, and which was based on Confucian ideologies, they had to take this exam to be a bureaucrat in the government. However, women had little political or economical power, as they had to obey their husbands, they had to obey their fathers, and they had to even obey their sons. However, Wu Di did have some controversies. He needed to finance his military campaigns. So what he did was establish state monopolies, so there will be only one government in charge of all the things, such as salt and iron, and this really affected small business companies. He did impose heavy taxes. The punishments were exceedingly harsh. And so this really led to the growth of inequalities, and with the increasing burden of taxes, incompetent emperors, and the corruption of bureaucrats, it eventually led to the end of the Western Han. Note that Wu Di was not the last emperor of the Western Han, there were more emperors after him. Now, the Xin dynasty comes. So Wang Mang usurped the throne, or just seized the throne. So that was Wang Mang right there. He established the Xin dynasty. However, he never had sufficient support and was always in a state of turmoil. He tried to change the shape of the coins that resembled those of the Zhou dynasty, but that turned out to be unpopular. He attempted to confiscate and redistribute the land to the rich, so the peasants were really unhappy. Natural disasters also played a role in bringing the end of the Xin dynasty, like the floods and droughts, and this created widespread starvation. And this eventually ended in 23 CE with a rebellion. Now, the Eastern Han dynasty comes after the Xin dynasty. So Liu Xiu overthrew the Xin dynasty, establishing the Eastern Han or later Han dynasty. And that's Liu Xiu right there. So the capital was at Luoyang, east of Xi'an. So it was also called the Eastern Han dynasty because, yeah, it was the east of Xi'an. So one really great thing about him was that he was merciful. He was really decisive, but he was really lenient, and he controlled with peaceful measure and not by brute force. So this was almost comparable to Liu Bang from the Western Han dynasty, and not really like Wu Di. He did try to build a powerful central administration like the early Han. He then renamed to Guangwudi, which means widespread martial emperor. His reforms and strong leadership gave additional 200 years to the Han dynasty. However, there were, of course, some factors that led to the end of the Han dynasty. So once again, locusts and floods. This was a disaster for agriculture. Internal struggle. The government officials inside the government tried to fight for their own dominance and power. And there were, of course, peasant rebellions. And the Han dynasty ended in 220 CE. The rivals usurped the throne and established the Wei dynasty, or better known as the Three Kingdoms. However, let's end up with a better note, and as there were quite a few accomplishments. So Han was named the Golden Age of China because it had 400 years of relative peace and accomplishments. The Silk Road was established in Han Dynasty, very important. So that's the Silk Road right there in red. So foreign trade prospered, and it was also the exchange of ideas, religions, and technologies. And if you take AP US history, you could also connect this to the Columbian Exchange. The Han also did a great job at maintaining and restoring the Great Wall. There was a growth of economy, especially from agriculture, as there was the increase of cattle and there were the new projects that expanded production. There was also industrial growth such as the water wheel, gunpowder, and porcelain. Paper was invented, and this was really important. Literature flourished, such as histories, diaries, and poetries. Sima Qian wrote the Book of History, really important, as I believe it was one of the books that first chronicled Chinese history. And that's Sima Qian right there. And the earliest mathematical works were created, and astronomy was kind of introduced. Acupuncture, this was somewhat like a therapeutic medical treatment, which is still used today. So it has a lasting legacy because of what we know today. In Chinese, we call the Chinese characters as the Han characters. As you can see, that is the Han. And that is it for the Han Dynasty. Hope you have enjoyed it and hope that you have learned something.